Hello everyone. Today we'll discuss about nervous system. What is this nervous system? Nervous system is a system which regulates the body by the neurons and the nerve fibers. Actually, the body is mainly controlled by the two types of the systems. One is nervous system and another one is endocrine system. Endocrine system is a chemical regulation, it is by the hormones, and the nervous system by the nerve fibers and the its neurons. Okay, that is what the nervous system. And this nervous system is mainly divides into two types. One is central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And if you see the central nervous system, that is by the brain and the spinal cord. Brain and the spinal cord together works in case of the central nervous system, and whereas come to the peripheral nervous system, that is by the nerve fiber and the ganglions is the peripheral nervous system. And if you see the structure of the brain, so there is the skull, inside of the skull there is presence of the brain. This brain is divides into three types. One is prosencephalon, that is also called as forebrain, and next one is mesencephalon, that is also called as midbrain, and rhombencephalon, that is also called as hindbrain. Prosencephalon, mesencephalon, and rhombencephalon. In orderly, forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. And this prosencephalon is again divided into two types. One is telencephalon and another one is diencephalon. In case of the telencephalon, cerebral hemisphere, basal ganglia, and the hippocampus, then amygdalus nucleus are present. Telencephalon. And whereas come to the diencephalon, thalamus, hypothalamus, metathalamus, and the subthalamus are the parts involved in case of the diencephalon. And next one, mesencephalon, in the midbrain there is no further dividation, and the rhombencephalon, which is called as hindbrain, this is divides into two types, that is metencephalon and another one is myencephalon. Metencephalon is nothing but the pons and the cerebellum. The parts involved in the metencephalon, pons and the cerebellum. And next one is the nervous system. The dividation of the classification of the nervous system. This nervous system is mainly divides into two types. So as we discussed already, one is central nervous system and another one is peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is by the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system again divides into two types. One is autonomic nervous system, another one is somatic nervous system. This autonomic nervous system is again divides into sympathetic nervous system and another one is parasympathetic nervous system. These are also called as sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system and the parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system. And then neuron. It is a structural and the functional unit of the nervous system. It is a basic cell, so which is structurally, functionally basic cell. So that is called as neuron. It is okay. So the nervous system is completely made by this neurons itself. Okay, and these neurons are classified into different ways. So in that, the neurons are depending upon the number of the poles, and that in the sense, in the structure of the neuron, there are poles are present. Depending upon that number of the poles, okay, so one classification, and another one is depending upon the function, what they are working, and next one is depending upon the length of the axon. Generally, the neuron, in the structure of the neuron, okay, so there is axons and dendrites are present. Okay, so in that the axons and dendrites are present, and by that the presence of that and axons and dendrites, okay, there is dividation. Like that, if two poles are present, that is called as bipolar. and if it is a single pole is present on the neuron, and on that single pole one is axon and another one is dendrite, that is called as unipolar neuron. If two poles are present in both ends of the neurons, that is called as bipolar neurons. And so many poles are present on the neuron, that is called as multipolar neuron. Okay, and next one is, if you see the structure of the neuron, the neuron is like as in this diagram. Okay, so the neurons contain soma, which is also called as cell body, and dendrites attached to this neuron sarcomere, and the one lengthy pole is present, that is called as axon. On the structure of this axon, some sheath is present. That sheath is called as myelin sheath. If this myelin sheath is present on the structure of the axon, that is called as myelinated nerve fibers, and if it is absent, that is called as non-myelinated nerve fibers. And next, if you see the layers of the neurons in the nerve fibers, okay, so that is the nerve fiber, it contains three types of the layers. In these three types of the layers, okay, the outermost layer is called as epineurium. Outermost layer is called as epineurium, and the middle layer is called as perineurium, and the innermost layer is called as endoneurium. Epineurium, perineurium, and the endoneurium. And next one, the classification of the nerve fibers. If you see the classification of the nerve fibers, that is basically depends upon the structure of the nerve fiber, and next one is structure of distribution, and next one is structure of origin, and depending upon the function, and next one is depending upon the secretion of the neurotransmitters, and next one is depending upon the diameter and conduction of the impulses. Totally 6 types of the nerve fibers are present by their function or the structure, whatever it is. Okay, first come to the depending upon the structure. Depending upon the structure, these are divides into 3 types, as we know. Okay, so unipolar, bipolar, and the multipolar. And next one is depending upon the distribution. By the distribution, these are in 2 types. One is somatic and another one is motor. Motor nerve fibers and the somatic nerve fibers. Somatic nerve fibers, which carries the impulses, sensory impulses to the brain and spinal cord, is called as sensory nerve fibers. And next one is motor, which carries the information from the brain, is called as motor nerve fibers. And next one is depending upon the origin. Depending upon the origin, these are in 2 types. One is sensory and another one is motor, as usual. Okay, and next one is by the function. These are in 2 types: sensory somatic and the motor nerve fibers, and ganglia type 1, type 2. Okay, and next one, by the secretion of the neurotransmitter, these are in 2 types. One is adrenergic and another one is cholinergic. Okay, adrenergic in the sense which nerve fiber secretes adrenaline and noradrenaline, and another one is cholinergic nerve fibers which secretes acetylcholine. And next one is depending upon the diameter and the conduction of impulses. These are in 3 types: A fibers, B fibers, and C fibers. Okay, and next one is, if you see the properties of this nerve fibers, it contains so many properties. The first one is excitability. So this excitability is nothing but when the stimulus is applied, there is change occurs in the environment, is called as excitability. So during this excitability, the action potential is aroused, and this action potential and the electrotonic potential is also present, that is also called as local potential, and the voltage clamping is present in case of the nerve fibers. And second one is conductivity. Conductivity is in the sense conduction of the impulses, like mechanism, how this action potential is conducted, how it is continuous. So how the impulses to send, what is the time gap, everything is this conduction of the impulses. There is a system which controls this conduction, and the conduction through the myelinated nerve fibers and the non-myelinated is entirely different. Like in case of the myelinated nerve fibers, there is jumping of the signals or the impulses. That type of signals is called as saltatory conductions. And another one, in case of the non-myelinated nerve fibers, that is called as regular transmission of the impulse through that regular. So the through the myelinated nerve fiber, it is faster than the non-myelinated nerve fiber transmission of the signals. Okay, and next another property is refractory period. This refractory period is in two types. One is absolute refractory period and another one is relative refractory period. And next one is, it completely supports all or none law, refractory period. Next one is summation. Adding of the low voltage signals. By that it gives impulse to the transmitted to the muscle fiber. And next one is adaptation. Adapting to that particular stimulus. After some time, the neurotransmitter won't be released by the nerve fiber, because it is adapted to that stimulus so that it won't release the neurotransmitters. Okay, and next one is infatigability. So this infatigability is nothing but theoretically the nerve fiber won't get fatigued. And next one is all or none law. So all or none law is nothing but whatever it is the strength of the stimulus and whatever it is the number of the stimulus. If nerve fiber wanted to give the response, so it can give, or at all, it's not at all. That is called as all or none law. And if you see the action potential, it is as same as like the muscle fiber itself. Okay, so when there is stimulus is applied, then there is stimulus artifact, and next firing latent period, and after that firing level, overshoot, spike potential, immediately depolarization, hyperpolarization of the nerve fiber. If you see the resting membrane potential in case of the nerve fiber, that is about minus 70 millivolts, and in case of the skeletal muscle, that is about minus 90 millivolts. And next one is the firing level in case of the nerve fibers, that is about minus 55 millivolts, and in case of skeletal muscle, that is about minus 75 millivolts. And next one is end of the depolarization, that is about plus 35 millivolts in case of the nerve fiber and plus 55 millivolts in case of the skeletal muscle fiber. And if you see the conduction of the impulses in case of the myelinated and non-myelinated fibers, that is entirely different. In case of the non-myelinated nerve fibers, there is no disturbances there, so that there is regular transmission of the impulses. Smoothly going it is. And whereas come to the myelinated nerve fibers, there is presence of the myelin sheath, so that there is jumping of the signals or the impulses through the nerve fiber, so that what happens, so in between the nodes, that is called as the myelin sheath gives some gaps in between the nerve fiber, so that is called as node of runway. The jumping of the signals from one node of runway to another node of the runway. That type of conduction is called as saltatory conduction. And next, if you see the degeneration and the regeneration of the nerve fiber, so when there is the injury occurs in case of the nerve fiber, after that the myelin sheath is disappears, and then there is attachment of the axon terminal, and after that the regeneration of the nerve fiber completed, and then the neurons all are participated in that, and then this myelin sheath is reproduced. This is what the regeneration of the nerve fiber. And next, neuroglia. What is this neuroglia? Neuroglia is nothing but the cell which supports neurons is called as neuroglia. This neuroglia is the cell which supports the neurons, supporting cells there are. And these are, it contains glue, neuroglia, attached cells, binding cells, supporting cells. Okay, and here if you see the classification of this neuroglia, these are in two types. So one is, later on we'll discuss about this, and the central neuroglial cells, and another one is peripheral neuroglial cells. The central neuroglial cells which are present in the central nervous system, peripheral neuroglial cells which are present in the peripheral nervous system. And these central neuroglial cells are in two types. So one is astrocytes and another one is microglia. And peripheral neuroglial cells are in two types. So one is Schwann cells and another one is satellite cells. These Schwann cells and satellite cells are situated in the peripheral nervous system, and the astrocytes, microglia, oligodendrites are present in case of this central neuroglial cells, central nervous system. These are okay. And next one is the types of the neuroglial cells. We can see here clear. That is what the astrocytes, and the different types of the astrocytes we have, like protoplasmic astrocytes, and next one is fibrous astrocytes, and next one is oligodendrocyte, and after that Schwann cells, satellite cells we can see clearly. Okay, and next one is receptors. If you see these receptors, the receptor is nothing but a cell or a compound which receives the signals from the sensory area, is called as receptors. These receptors are divided into two types. One is exteroceptors and another one is interoceptors. First come to the exteroceptors. Exteroceptors are in three types. In that, the first one is cutaneous receptors, and another one is chemoreceptors, and next one is telereceptors. And these three types of the receptors, and if you see the interoceptors, the interoceptors are in two types. One is viseroceptors and another one is proprioceptors. The viseroceptors are nothing but in the visceras, and the proprioceptors, so which are situated in the ascendings, are the attachments. Okay, see in the stretch receptors, and next one is are present in the heart, and next one is baroreceptors present in the blood vessels, and next one is chemoreceptors are present in the GIT, gastrointestinal tract, and the osmoceptors are present in the urinary tract and the brain. And proprioceptors, the receptors like muscle spindle, which is present in the muscle, and the Golgi tendon organ, which is present in the tendon, and next one is Fascinean corpuscle, so which is present in the ligament and fascia, and the free nerve endings, which is present in the fascia and the joints. And next one is hair cells, which are present in the vestibular apparatus. All these are the proprioceptors which maintains our posture and the equilibrium. That in the sense what? So if you're moving like this and we are not falling down, and if you are moving forward we are not falling down, and everything is with this in the proprioception. That in the sense what? Proprioception or the proprioceptors is nothing but which maintaining the posture and the equilibrium. Okay, and next one is, if you see the pressure stimulus, see when the pressure stimulus is applied, so at that point of the time, immediately the pressure stimulus is signaling to the compression of the Fascinean corpuscle. And by the Fascinean corpuscle, so there is elongation or the change in the shape of the Fascinean corpuscle. And there is deformation of the center of the fiber. By the deformation of the center of the fiber, the entrance of the sodium ions into the core fibers. And the development of the receptor potential is developed. By the development of this receptor potential, so there is development of the local circuit of the current flow. And when there is this local current flow is present, immediately the spread of the local circuit current flow to the first node of the runway of the axon terminal. And next one is the entrance of the sodiums into the voltage gated channels and the generation of the action potential in the nerve fibers. And next one is synapse. What is this synapse? Synapse is nothing but it is a junction between the two nerve endings is called as synapse. It is same as like neuromuscular junction itself, but the neuromuscular junction is a junction between the nerve fiber and the muscle fiber. And whereas come to the synapse is a junction between the nerve fiber and the nerve fiber, or from one neuron to another neuron. It is a junction. Okay, and if you see the classification of this, there is two types of the classification. One is anatomical classification and another one is physiological classification. Come to the anatomical classification of this one. That is the first one is axo-axonic synapse, and second one is axodendritic synapse, and third one is axosomatic synapse. First, axo-axonic synapse is nothing but a synapse. So the axon of the one neuron's terminal, axon terminal, is binds with the another neuron's axon terminal, is called as axo-axonic synapse. And the second one is axodendritic synapse. It is nothing but one neuron's axon is binds with the another neuron's dendrite, is called as axodendritic synapse. And next one is axosomatic synapse. Is nothing but one neuron's axon is binds with the another neuron's soma, is called as axosomatic synapse. And if you see this diagram, we'll come to know very clearly. So the axo-axonic synapse, and second one is axodendritic synapse and axosomatic synapse. Clear? Okay. And next one is the functional classification, that is what the physiological classification. Physiologically, it is divided into two types. So one is electrical synapse and another one is chemical synapse. Electrical synapse is nothing but the junction is the electrical barriers are present, that is what the gap junction is present in case of the electrical synapse. The presynaptic membrane is the one neuron and postsynaptic membrane is another neuron. In between this, the transmission of the impulses through the gap junction, the barriers are present in that gap junction. And so the electron movement is present in the gap junction. And whereas come to the chemical synapse, in case of this chemical synapse, there is no gap junction is present, directly synaptic cleft, okay, presynaptic membrane, and next one is synaptic cleft, and after that postsynaptic membrane. Through the synaptic cleft, okay, the transmission of the neurotransmitter to the postsynaptic membrane from the presynaptic membrane. The neurotransmitters like acetylcholine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine, secretin, CCK, whatever it is, that is transmitted through the synapse, this synaptic cleft. Okay, and next one is, if you see that transmitting, how it is transmitting in the sense, receptors are present on the postsynaptic membrane. When we are applying the stimulus, then the impulses pass through the presynaptic membrane, through the synaptic cleft. So it reached that acetylcholine or whatever the neurotransmitter is reached to the postsynaptic membrane, and that receptor takes this and there is binding of that receptor with this neurotransmitter and reached to the postsynaptic membrane. Then there is end plate potential is present. If you see properly, there is when there is arriving of the action potential into the axon terminal, in the presynaptic neuron, and immediately opening of the calcium channels and in the presynaptic membrane. And after that, influx of the calcium channels ions from the ECF into the axon terminal. And after that, opening of the vessels and the releasing of the acetylcholine. Okay, and after that, in the synaptic cleft, the passage of the acetylcholine through the synaptic cleft. And in case of the postsynaptic membrane, then there is formation of the acetylcholine receptors, and after that, opening of the sodium channels and influx of the sodium into the ECF, from the ECF. And then development of the end-plate potential, EPSP, stimulating potential it is, and opening of the sodium channels in the initial segment of the axons in the postsynaptic membrane, and then there is spreading of the action potential through the axon of the postsynaptic neuron, from the one neuron to another neuron, how it is passing. And that is what that. And next one is, so same thing, the passage of the GABA, it is another neuron, neurotransmitter, it is same as like that only. Action potential arrival and the sodium channels and the GABA reach to the presynaptic membrane, and the GABA is released, and the GABA is GABA is transmitted through the synaptic cleft, and that is reached by the opening of the potassium channels and the chloride channels, and then there is hyperpolarization, that is what IPSP development. Inhibitory potential it is. And next one is, if you see the properties of this synapse, the properties like one-way conduction, there is only one-way conduction, presynaptic to postsynaptic. There is no transmission of the impulses from the postsynaptic to presynaptic. This is called as Bell-Meson-Dela. And next one is synaptic delay. So when we are applying the stimulus, it takes some time to develop the end-plate potential in the postsynaptic membrane. That is called as synaptic delay. And next one is fatigue. The neuron is not at all fatigued, it is, but it is adapting. The adaptation to that particular stimulus, and after some time, it won't release any neurotransmitters. And next one is summation. If you are applying low voltage type of stimulus, adding of that low voltage type of stimulus, and then so it gives the response. That is what we call as summation of the stimulus and giving the response. And next one is electrical property. You see the electrical property by the development of the action potential and the resting membrane potentials maintaining. And next one is convergence and divergence. Convergence in the sense from different types of the neurons coming to the one. So from all 5 fingers, okay, coming to this part, that is called as convergence. And the divergence, like from this neuron, giving the signals to the 5 fingers, is the divergence. Okay, and next one is another one is the neurotransmitter. What is this neurotransmitter? It is a chemical substance which giving the response by the stimulus and which associated with the postsynaptic membrane and involves in the giving the response by the postsynaptic membrane. Okay, and after that, this is by the Otto Levio in 1921. Neurotransmitter is discovered by the Otto Levy in 1921. He is an Australian scientist, and after that, the criteria of the neurotransmitter. What is neurotransmitter? What are the features of this? In the sense, if you see the neurotransmitter criteria, it must be found in the neuron. Obviously, then only it is called as neurotransmitter. And next one is it must be produced in the neuron itself. Somewhere it should not produce. It should produce in the neuron and transmit in the neuron, and it should formed in the neurons. And next one, it must be released by a neuron. And after releasing, it must be act on the target area and produce some biological effect. It should. Okay, and after that action, it must be, it gets inactive. Is called as a neurotransmitter. And if you see the classification of these neurotransmitters, that is mainly in two types. So one is depending upon the chemical nature and depending upon the function. Depending upon the function, there is excitatory neurotransmitters and another one is inhibitory neurotransmitters. Excitatory neurotransmitters, in the sense the impulse by the neurotransmitter is give positive response. So whatever, it increases the secretions and increases the heart rate and increases the rate of respiration, increases the skeletal muscle contraction. All these comes under the excitatory neurotransmitters, like acetylcholine, adrenaline, noradrenaline. And inhibitory neurotransmitters, like the neurotransmitters like which inhibits the action. Okay, so this inhibitory neurotransmitters like secretin, CCK decreases or inhibits the secretions and the action of the heart inhibited, and the rate of respiration and the skeletal muscle contraction is decreased. So all these comes under the inhibitory neurotransmitters. And next one is reflex. What is reflex activity? The reflex activity is nothing but a process of the response to the peripheral nerves. To the peripheral nerves. Stimulation that occurs without consciousness is called as a reflex activity. It is a type of protective mechanism and it protects the body against the whatever is the stimulus. And so it is irreparable damages from the, it protects from the irreparable damages. And so if you see the reflex activity, there are 5 components are present. That is what we call as a reflex arc. Reflex arc it is. Okay. In that, the first one is receptor, and next one is efferent nerve fiber, and next is the center efferent nerve fiber, and the target organ or effector organ. See, once whatever it is the stimulus we are applying, so that is received by a receptor, and through the efferent nerve fiber that reach to the center, spinal cord or the brain, higher centers. And after that, the reaction by the motor nerve fibers, that is the efferent nerve fiber, and that reach to the target or the effector organ. This is what reflex arc it is. And if you see the classification of the reflexes, the classification of the reflexes depending upon the so many types, and that the first one is that depending upon the whether it is acquired or the inborn. Like inborn reflexes is nothing but the unconditional reflexes. See, so a small baby after the birth, if you are giving honey with the finger, okay, so just is sucking the finger, so for the sweetness. That is an inborn reflex. He's moving his hands and the respiration, all these are inborn reflexes. And next one is acquired reflexes or the conditioned reflexes. Somebody is biting, and at that time, so whatever the response, without unknowingly us, what is the response is called as acquired reflexes. Okay, and next one, depending upon the situation, it is anatomical classification. Depending upon this, the reflexes are divided into cerebral reflexes and the cortical reflexes and the midbrain reflexes, then bulbar or the medullary reflexes and the spinal reflexes. First come to the cerebellar reflexes. The reflexes, the center, in the center is present in the cerebellum is called as cerebellar reflexes. And next one is cortical reflexes. In the cortex, cerebral cortex, the center is present in the cerebral cortex. And the midbrain reflexes, the center is present in the midbrain. And next one is bulbar or medullary reflexes. is nothing but the spinal, that is the center is present in the medulla oblongata. It's called as medullary reflexes. And the spinal reflexes in the spinal cord and pons is called as spinal reflexes it is. And next one is depending upon the purpose of the reflex activity. See the depending upon this purpose, okay, that is in two types. One is protective reflex or the flexor reflex, and another one is anti-gravity reflex or the extensor reflex. One is flexor reflex and another one is extensor reflex, like that. And next one is depending upon the number of synapses, okay, monosynaptic reflex and the polysynaptic reflex. In that reflex activity, if the presence of the more neurons or the more synapse is present, that is called as polysynaptic. And if only one synapse is present, that is called as monosynaptic reflex it is called as. And next one is depending upon the whether it is visceral or somatic. By the depending upon this, there is two types. One is somatic reflexes and another one is autonomic or the visceral reflexes. Somatic reflexes are by the functioning of the brain and the spinal cords and the autonomic nervous system without consciousness of the without connecting to the brain and the spinal cord. And next one is depending upon the clinical basis. These are in four types. One is superficial reflexes and another one is deep reflexes. Next one is visceral reflexes and another one is pathological reflexes. Superficial, deep, visceral and the pathological reflexes. And first come to the superficial mucous membrane reflexes. If you see these superficial mucous membrane reflexes, in that the first one is corneal reflex. The corneal reflex is a reflex when we are applying a cotton here over the eyeball, so over the white layer of the cornea, so in the eye, then there is blinking of the eye. That is blinking of the eye and the closure of the eyelids. And the efferent nerve is for this fifth cranial nerve, and the efferent nerve is seventh cranial nerve, and the center is the pons. And next one is conjunctival reflex. Irritation. So what we are giving the stimulus in the sense irritation of the conjunctiva. So by the blinking of the eye, the center is fifth cranial, pons is the center, and the efferent nerve fiber is the fifth cranial nerve, and the seventh cranial nerve is the efferent nerve fiber. And next, the nasal reflex. Irritation in the nasal nose, and by that what happened? The sneezing. And next one is pharyngeal reflex. The pharyngeal is nothing but irritation in the pharynx, and then there is a retching of the ganging of the pharynx. It's nothing but opening of the mouth it is. That is the reaction. And next one is uvular reflex. So in this irritation of the uvula, raising of the uvula is the action. And next one is superficial cutaneous reflexes. For the superficial cutaneous reflexes, so there are scapular reflex on the scapula, and next one is upper abdominal reflexes on the abdominal area, upper portion of the umbilicus, and next one is lower abdominal reflexes, stroking on the abdominal wall at the umbilical and the iliac tract, and next cremasteric reflexes, the stroking of the skin on the upper inner aspects of the thigh is the cremasteric reflexes. And next one is gluteal reflexes, is the stroking on the skin over the gluteal muscle. And next bulbocavernous reflex, stroking of the glands, stroking on the dorsum of the glans penis is called as bulbocavernous reflexes. And the anal reflexes is nothing but stroking on the ganglions regions. Okay, and then the contraction of the anal sphincters is called as anal reflexes. And next one is deep reflexes, jaw jerk. Jaw. On this, with the help of the knee hammer, so there is, if we bite like this, okay, stroking on this jaw, and the jaw moves like this, and the closure of the mouth is there. And next one is biceps on this, okay, so if it stroke on here, okay, so then the biceps jerk, and after the triceps jerk, the percussion on the triceps with help of the knee hammer, and then the tendon, the muscle moves like the contraction, gives contraction, and supinator jerk or the radial peristalsis jerk on the wrist, you will move stroke on this with help of the knee hammer, and then this moves like this. Okay, and next wrist tendon fingers and here, so the movement of this, and if you stroke on this, the movement is like this. And next one is knee jerk. This knee jerk or the patellar jerk. Okay, the patient should be sit or in the supine position. The remaining lower limb should be moved very freely, and then it will stroke on the patella, lower patella, and the lower limb moves freely like this. Is called as this knee jerk or the patellar jerk it is. And the angular jerk or the ankle jerk over the ankle, so of the foot, if you will apply the stroking with help of the knee hammer, and the sole will move like this. It's called as angular jerk or the ankle jerk it is. Okay, and next if you see the properties of these reflexes, okay, it is undergo for the bell mesenteria, that is what one-way conduction, and next one is reaction time. It will take some time for the giving reaction, and next one is summation. If you are applying the low stimulus and adding up that low strength of the stimulus, so by that it gives reaction time, and by the summation and occlusion, and after some time, so we are applying 2 to 3 stimulus at a time, it gives only one response. That is called as occlusion. And next one is subliminal fringe. So below the subliminal level of this stimulus, okay, so it adding of that subliminal, and so it gives a response at one time. We are applying, if you are applying 2 to 3 subliminal strength of the stimulus, and after 2 to 3 it adapts all this and it gives response, that is called as subliminal fringe it is. And next one is recruitment and the recurrentment and after discharge. After discharge obviously it is normal. Okay, and next if you see the spinal cord. The spinal cord undergo for the 5 segments. In that, the first segment is called as cervical segment, and next one is called as thoracic segment, and next one is called as lumbar segment, and sacral segment, and the coccygeal segment. The cervical segment is about, it contains 8 vertebrae, and next one is thoracic segment contains 12 vertebrae, and the lumbar segment contains 5 vertebrae, and the sacral segment contains 5 vertebrae, and the coccyx contains 1 vertebra. And totally it is about 31. Cervical segment here, thoracic segment here, thoracic cage, and the sacral lumbar in the abdominal region, and the sacral below the lumbar segment, and the coccyx at the level of the end of the spinal cord it is. And if you see the parts of this, majorly it contains 2 horns. One is grey horn and another one is white horn. Grey horn and white horn. Grey column and white column. Okay, and the posterior midline suckers is nothing but the upper part. The upper stroke is called as posterior medial suckers. And the anteriorly there is a fissure present. That fissure is called as anterior medial fissure it is. And the white column is nothing but the outer part, and the grey column is nothing but the inner part. Grey horn is the inner part and that is outer part. In the middle of this there is a spinal canal is present. And after that, if you see the tracts which are present in this, is 2 types of the tracts are present. One is ascending tracts and another one is descending tracts. And in this ascending tracts, so we have totally so many tracts are present. In that, depending upon the situation, there are 3 types of the situations are there. In the white column it is ascending tracts are present. Anterior white column, the tract name is anterior spinothalamic tract. And lateral white column, so it contains 8 tracts, ascending tracts, which ascends towards the brain is called as ascending tract. That's it. Okay. So one is lateral spinothalamic tract and the ventral spinocerebellar tract and dorsal spinocerebellar tract, spinotectal tract, and next one is fascineum dorsalis, and next spino-reticular tract, and next one is spino-olivary tract, and next one is spino-vestibular tract. All these are present in the lateral white column. And next one is posterior white column. In case of the posterior white column, there are three types of ascending tracts are present. So one is fascineum gracilis, fascineum cutaneous, and fasciculoma tract of the strata. These three tracts are present in the posterior white column. And next, if you see the descending tracts, so there are totally 9 descending tracts are present. Out of that 9 descending tracts, the pyramidal tracts and the extrapyramidal tracts are present. The pyramidal tracts is nothing but 2 types of the pyramidal tracts are present. So one is anterior corticospinal tracts and another one is lateral corticospinal tract. So the descending tracts is nothing but the information takes from the brain. These are called as descending tracts. In that pyramidal, extrapyramidal. In the pyramidal we have anterior corticospinal and next one is lateral corticospinal tract. And in the extrapyramidal tracts, there are 7 tracts are present. So one is medial longitudinal fasciculus and second one is anterior vestibulospinal tract and third one is lateral vestibulospinal tract and fourth one is reticulospinal tract and fifth one is tectospinal tract and then rubrospinal tract and after that olivary tract is called as the ascending tracts and the descending tract. And after these tracts, next one is sensation. What is the sensation? So whatever it is, a stimulus which is afforded by the externally is called as sensation. This sensation is mainly in 2 types. One is somatic sensation and another one is special sensation. The somatic sensation which is involved in the epicrine and protocrine and next one is deep sensation. In case of epicrine sensation, epicristic sensation, there is the tactile sensation, tactile localization, tactile discrimination and tactile discrimination temperature sensation with the finest range with about the 25 to 40 degrees centigrade is called as epicritic sensation it is. And next one is protopathic sensation. The protopathic sensation is nothing but the pressure sensation, pain sensation, temperature sensation with the wider range about the below 25 and the above 45 degrees centigrade. And next one is deep sensation is with the vibratory sensation, visceral sensation and the kinesthetic sensation. This kinesthetic sensation again divides into 2 types. One is conscious kinesthetic sensation and another one is subconscious kinesthetic sensations.